Welcome to the classic. I don't know if we should call it a podcast anymore. Should we? Well, it's still sort of a podcast, isn't it?
We're vloggers now, Felix. We're in the big league.
Yeah. We're sort of moving into vlogging. I should do that again.
No, I thought that was an excellent intro.
Okay. Let's leave it in then. I'm Felix.
And I'm Greg.
And this is, I think, 6 things you need to know about driving and owning a classic air-cooled 911. And this is not supposed to be a sort of buyer's guide or DIY video. It's just something to keep in mind so that you don't look like a complete noob when.
This is perfect because I am going to an air-cooled Porsche event tonight, so I can take on board these tips.
Yes,
and not look like an utter dickhead.
No,
turn up holding the fuel pump the wrong way around.
I
just gave it away. Damn it! Oh, stay tuned.
Yeah, that's a teaser.
Unintentional tease.
Yeah. So
I'm new to 911 ownership.
Yeah, we're sitting in your very 911 at the moment.
I hadn't realised. Yes, we are. So this is a good one. It's very kind of you to take me through the ins and outs. Yeah, how long have you had yours? 12 years? 12 years,
yeah. I bought in April 2010.
God, you must be making a fortune on that when you sell it.
I'll never sell it.
Never sell well, we've got it on video.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I haven't sold it in 12 years.
Turn up in that Ferrari 360 that you keep running after. So the 911 is which I never thought of this. I always thought it was ergonomically. I always saw them as well-designed cars, but you see it as an ergonomic nightmare. Which is
and I think we'll get into that a bit later. But it's especially when sort of as the car progressed and as the sort of they added more and more things, they didn't really have any place to put them. So when we will jump into my car a bit later on, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. But we'll get back to that, I think. So we could do this at sort of a sort of chronological order, if you like.
You take it how you feel.
Yeah.
Program.
Well, first up, how you fill it up with petrol.
Yes.
And
which I've already been doing wrong, apparently.
Yeah, apparently, and I was a bit surprised by that because
you air-cooled Porsche.
Yeah, doing what you do for work.
Maybe we shouldn't tell everyone.
And there's a good reason for this. You should actually turn the handle upside down when you fill it with petrol, and that has to do with the ventilation of the tank. So if you use it more, sort of put it in the ordinary way, it will just go click 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 click, and it will stop pumping. Really all the time. And if you turn it around, I think you I suppose you sort of bypass the automatic shut off on the petrol or filler. And we've got some actual footage of how you should.
Exciting.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see
Exciting. It's the first time ever. How you fill your car with petrol.
Watch a man fill a car with petrol. But that was genuinely life-changing. I think, in my defence, a lot of our cars are already filled up, and we have our own fueling system here.
Okay.
So I haven't actually been. I think this is the first time since owning my own car I've had to pay for my own bloody fuel when I go to the petrol station.
Yeah, you chose a good time to pay for it as well.
Yeah.
It's actually diesel is a bit cheaper than 98, but only by so much.
But so that was a good learning for me, for sure.
Yeah.
Genuinely hadn't noticed that. I have pictures of people fueling 911s and I hadn't even noticed.
Maybe they are doing it wrong as well?
No, it was a picture of a guy we know doing it.
Okay.
I'd taken an arty picture of someone filling.
Oh.
And never made the connection that he'd, or the observation.
You just made the assumption that he was an idiot.
Doing, yeah.
And another thing that's sort of slightly controversial, there are lots of different sort of ideas surrounding this is the question about fuel additives.
Yeah.
I don't know have you sort of heard anything, or have you
No.
gotten any advice on what to put in your tank apart from fuel?
That's what I've been putting in. Hopefully.
Yeah. And I know of people who are putting sort of additives, sort of lead replacement additives in the tank, and well, 911s didn't need leaded fuel to begin with, because the heads are aluminium, and the valve seats are already hardened. So for that reason, you don't need sort of lead mimicking additives.
Is this the early cars that people tend to? Even in the 912, you don't need it. And the early, like the 90.
Yeah,
back to the short wheelbase.
Because now
is it just a misconception? That
the short wheelbase had magnesium engines, didn't they? Well, the really early ones had aluminium.
Yeah.
So no, it should be fine. I don't know about 912s though. I think they're aluminium as well.
Yeah. Interesting.
Obviously, it's a good idea to make an air-cooled engine out of aluminium for heat dissipation.
Yeah.
So, but one thing that I put in my tank, seeing as mine's an 82 and it's got the Bosch K-Jet injection system, I just splash a bit of two-stroke oil into the tank, sort of every 5 or 6 fill-ups.
Yeah. Just
a couple of deciliters, because I don't think there is a truth to this. There are probably as many truths and as many conceptions as there are owners, but from what I've heard, it doesn't harm, and it also helps keep the workings of the injection system lubricated.
Good to know.
Especially if you don't use the car regularly, it can sort of gunk up a bit. So yeah, so I'm doing that. I haven't really noticed it doing any harm, so I'm going to keep doing it.
12 years.
Yeah, and one engine rebuild though.
Oh god.
So yeah, that's how you fill it up with petrol. Next one could be how to start it. And there's a slight difference between the carb cars and the K-Jet cars.
Yeah, which is a really important thing.
Yeah. Do you want to take us through it?
So I read or watched a video the other day. Who was it with? A Porsche specialist who was driving a carb car, and his advice was to put the throttle to the floor, pedal to the metal when you're starting the car. Just open up the carb and I do that with mine.
Yeah.
No issue at all. I usually have to give it a little rev, just kind of catch it. I don't let it just fall to an idle, because then mine just dies. So I just give it a little rev and just catch it. A few pokes to the throttle, and then it just seems to catch and settle.
Because what happens when you open the throttle fully on a carb car is that you get sort of squirt of petrol directly into the engine, which will help it to start, obviously. But you shouldn't do this on a car equipped with the K-Jet system, because that can cause a backfire, which in turn cracks the air box, or the plastic part of the intake, basically.
Yeah, sounds so cool though. Backfire.
Yeah. But it's not that cool when you're standing at the side of the road with a car that's not running anymore.
Who needs an airbox anyway?
Yeah, who does? Well, they do. So you should stay off the throttle when cranking on a later, the K-Jet cars. And also there's we'll get back to this but when we go through the basic controls of the car, but on 1974, 5, or really 74 and 75, you on, even though they have the CIS injection system, or the Cagetronic injection system, you get the sort of a small knob down here between the seats that is basically a throttle. So you pull that slightly. Later cars got a component called an AAV, auxiliary air valve, that sort of helps the engine getting a bit more air while it's warming up, so you keep the revs up a bit, so that it doesn't stall when you're idling when it's cold. But that's only for 2 years. Later cars, 76 and later, got this automatic or mechanical solution for starting it. So yeah, and we were discussing also about carb cars. Do they have a choke? And I'm not sure. I don't think there's a choke. It's not a choke handle.
No.
It's probably a sort of an automatic choke of sorts.
I believe so. Yeah.
And we'll leave that at that. They may have a choke, and it may be automatic.
I need to find that if it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Checking the oil is a.
Checking the oil.
Oh, this is another. Like the petrol fill up, but yeah, the first time I drove air-cooled 911, had a massive panic about the oil level, and called the guys, and they were like, I was like, guys, there's no oil in the car. Like, you sent me out to drive the car with no oil in, and they were like, no, like you can't check the oil while it's after 5 minutes, like a normal, or like while the engine's a little bit warm. You have to drive. So I've heard different stories, but the general consensus seems to be about 30 minutes of driving, get the car on a level surface, and then check the oil while the engine's running as well.
Yeah. And actually, this was a bit of a surprise for me, because I saw an episode of Harry's Garage when he took a 930 turbo down to Spain, I think.
Oh yeah, that's a new episode, isn't it?
Yeah, and he actually checked the oil. Well, he said that you should check the oil. You should turn the engine off and then run to the back and check the oil. And I've never heard that before, and I do know that on Ferraris and Lamborghinis that also have dry sump engines, you should do that, and then there are some different methods to checking the oil, but on a 911 the engine should be running and it should be warm. Yeah. And there's a very good reason for that, and I've just given it away. It is the 911, the air-cooled 911 engines are dry sump. Yeah. So basically you have a normal sump or oil pan at the bottom of the engine with some oil in, but the majority of the oil is actually in a tank next to the engine, and the dipstick, it goes into that tank. So so that's why the engine the oil needs to be circulating for the dipstick to actually record. And if you there are a few stories about people checking the oil like they would on a normal car, and then adding oil until it shows on the dipstick with the engine off. Yeah. And then when they start it up, you can get a massive hydrolock of the engine, and then it's you're facing a pretty hefty bill. Yeah. And if you're lucky, you'll just dump all of the oil straight into the exhaust, and you'll spend the following weeks just pouring oil out of the exhaust. Either way, it's not good. Yeah, that's a very important one to know. Yeah.
Next on the list.
Yeah, how to shift gears. Yeah. So what you need to do with this, I think this actually applies to any classic car, that you can't drive it like it would a normal car or a sort of modern car. You can't get comfortable or sloppy with shifting the gears. Yeah. So you need to depress the clutch fully, and you need to, especially on 911s, you need to shift gears with a firm hand but not quick.
You can't hurry them.
No, exactly. You
Yeah.
can't slam it into gear because the synchros need some time to sort of do their job,
Yeah.
and the gearboxes themselves aren't the sturdiest of gearboxes.
Yeah.
Having said that, they are lovely to work with, and when you actually nail in a downshift without scraping or crunching, you know that it's all you.
Yeah, it's super satisfying.
Yeah.
Neutral at red lights.
Yeah, and actually, I always put mine in neutral at red lights, and I'm not really sure.
I've noticed a few people who do that.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why.
Yeah.
But what I've heard is that the clutch fork can break if you sort of sit for longer periods of time with the clutch depressed.
Yeah.
So you want to shift it into neutral and release the clutch, so that you don't put any unnecessary strain on the...
Interesting.
Yeah. Let's talk about the...
the gearboxes themselves. That's something that's like almost a whole... whole episode. I mean, I've seen blog posts.
Oh yeah.
Written on...
there are... Yeah. We should probably not get overly technical.
Yeah, let's just brush over it.
Yeah. So you get the basic... The first one is the 901 gearbox.
Which is what's right.
Yeah.
Right down there.
There
not down there, but...
Down there.
Yeah.
Or over there. That's the first of the cars, and the easiest way of recognizing them is that they have a dogleg first.
Yeah.
So basically, first is where you expect second to be.
Yeah.
And then you get the 915, which was launched in 1972, I think, which has a conventional H pattern.
Reverses under fifth, isn't it?
Yeah, reverses on to the right and down.
Yeah.
And then you get the G50, which is also 5-speed, but with a hydraulic clutch rather than cable operated.
Yeah.
And they are a lot heavier, but also a lot stronger.
Yeah.
And those were used up until the 993, I think.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
I don't know.
They were both 5 and 6 speed.
I mean, they introduced it in 87, didn't they? So it makes sense that it was.
And the turbo got them in 89.
Yeah. That seems to be, when you talk to most people, that's the gearbox everyone raves about, the G50. Yeah. But having driven all three and driven several 915s, people slag them off as being like almost unusable, and it's not true at all.
No, I don't. When I was buying mine, actually, I think I'm going to do a separate video on how I came about owning mine as well.
On gearboxes.
No one will watch that, not even me. But back then, back in sort of 12 years ago, that was even more of the case.
Yeah.
Everyone just said that go for a 3.2 with a G50.
Yeah.
Anything else is just crap.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I've heard that many times.
Yeah, and it's not true. I mean, sure, it's an old. The design of the gearbox is old. It's 50 years old. This year. Well, it was launched 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So you need to sort of keep that in mind. But as long as you don't do anything stupid with it, just let it shift gears at its own pace.
Yeah.
It can be. Well, it is quite recalcitrant when the oil is cold and so. Yeah, just keep that in mind, and it's a lovely thing.
Yeah,
it's a nice slick shift.
Yeah,
if you know what you're doing. And that's a nice segue into perhaps the money shift, which I've always thought of it in terms of the 915, but it's probably. It might be sort of applicable to the 901 as well, which is basically when you are going in a 915, when you're going sort of at red line in second and want to go into third, and then you hit first instead.
Yeah.
Which is a nice way of parting with your money. Well, it's not a nice way, it's a way of parting with your money.
It's only one way.
Because that obviously will put insane amounts of stress on the gearbox and the engine, and you will most likely have pistons hitting the valves, and because you will over rev by a lot. So don't do that. And that's even more, it's easier, it might be easier than you think to do that, because the 915s, and it's probably the same with this, there's no spring action between first and third, or sort of the first being here and third being here. There's no spring action of the stick between those two. This spring action is between third and fifth only. So you need to keep that in mind and just sort of physically move the lever over to the...
You can't, as you were saying before, you can't rush these shifts, and
So that's another good thing to know, especially if you're driving someone else's car. You don't want to... No. Oof. Okay.
Are we on to the controls now?
Maybe we're on to the heater.
Oh,
How the heater works, which I'm a bit apprehensive about doing, because I don't think anyone really knows how the heater works.
Life's great mysteries.
But on my car, I've made it easy for myself. I've just removed the heater altogether. I've removed the heat
so if anyone asks
exchange.
you, just like,
We
don't have any.
No. Put a hat on. A woolly hat.
Because you have headers.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
So I don't have heat exchangers.
Excellent sound instead.
Yeah.
You just put a hat on.
Yep.
Perfect.
And only drive it in the summer.
Because race car.
But we could do an attempt of explaining how the heater works.
Do people need to know, or do they just need to know the controls?
That was what I was doing.
Yeah,
No. I'm not going to go into the technical detail of 911 heaters.
I'm go all day.
That's, I mean, that is fuel for...
Yeah, I would like to know how the heater works. I have no idea.
So basically you have, down here, we should put some overlays.
We will.
Yeah. Down here you got, on this car you got two knobs. You got one for the...
one side beside each.
Yeah, one... You got four knobs in this car. So you got the red one is the one that controls the heater, and that in turn controls the amount of air going over the exhaust, which is heating the air going into the cabin, because obviously you don't have any coolant that will heat up.
Good point.
Good point. And then so that's what controls the air going to the front of the car, and then you got the basic controls on the dash, which is fairly conventional, I should say.
I can't work them out.
No, the low one, the red one, it can also controls the amount of, the mixture of the hot air going to the front of the car and the ambient sort of fresh air going into the front of the car. And then you got the control that's that sort of directs the air going to your feet or to the windscreen.
Which one's that?
The middle one.
Yeah.
And then this one controls when it's at the furthest setting to the left. It's set to recirculate, and then when you move it over, you find, and then when it gets to the first, that's when the blower motor kicks in, I think. So yeah, and also there is, my car actually had it when it was new, something really cool, which is an automatic was an automatic control for the heat flapper boxes in the rear. So you basically turn a knob down here, and that will direct based on the temperature of the air going over the exhaust, and also based on the temperature in the cabin, will control the amount of hot air going into the cabin, which is quite cool. Didn't work on mine, so I ditched it, and also it's a quite an ugly thing to have, but it was cool. So and those cars also had a blower motor in the engine bay, sort of, because on these cars and on mine as well, before I removed the heating, the cooling fan of the engine is actually what pushes air over the heat exchangers and into the cabin.
That's a nice bit of design.
Yeah, and the engine, or the engine bay blower motor, also makes it a bit tricky to reach things because it gets quite cramped in there. So yeah, that's the basic theory behind everything, I think. Maybe we should swap cars. Move into mine, and we'll talk about the basic controls. It's pretty much the same as this one, but mine's got a bit more kit.
Right.
Well, relatively.
Let's not start boasting, Felix.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
We swapped cars.
We did.
We are now in Felix's 82.
82, 911, yeah. So there's, yours is a 69? Yeah. So it's 13 years younger.
That's a big difference. I never actually...
but you can't really tell from in here.
No.
So I was gonna speak briefly about the basic controls of the 911, and I think we'd better do it in this one, because this one actually has a bit more kit.
A bit more legibility of the controls as well, I've noticed.
And like I mentioned, that this is basically, I mean, underneath this is pretty much the same car as yours. But when time progressed, Porsche wanted to add more things to the 911, so they sort of did, and then they realized that they didn't really have any place to put things or put the controls for them. So we'll get some overlays for this, but I thought I would just take you through going from sort of my left to right about the controls and what they do. So one of the first things that actually catch a lot of people out, I've realized when they go out for a ride in this, is that they don't know how to get out. And so they start fondling this, but actually the control for the door is down here. You pull it out and you open the door. So that's how you get out.
This is good advice, because if you go in a friend's 911, you won't look like a total noob when you exit the car. Yeah.
This is solid consumer advice.
This is gold.
Yeah. Next up, we got the door locks, which on your car is quite conventional. On this car, not so much.
Yeah.
You actually you can lock it by pushing this button.
It's bizarre. Yeah. These little things are really really weird.
And then you unlock it. Again, going back to an old Harry's Garage video, he actually locked himself in a 930 because he pushed the central locking button to lock the car, but pushing it again doesn't unlock it. So he didn't realize how to get out. So it's these knobs here. And the thought behind it is actually that you can leave the window cracked for a bit and still lock the car without anybody sort of reaching in and unlocking it with sort of a coat hanger or something.
Yeah.
Next up, you got your controls for the electric wing mirrors, and there's also, so this is going, well, the ignition's off, but it's for controlling the wing mirrors, and there's a button that should be here to select between left and right. Actually, this car originally came from Germany, was imported to Sweden in 1985, so this, when it came to Sweden, actually only had one wing mirror, so it doesn't have this.
Ah, interesting.
And the right wing mirror was fitted after being imported to Sweden. I think so, because Germany didn't have. They only needed one wing mirror. In Sweden, you needed two. Next up, you got your controls for the for the power windows. The one furthest, closest to me is for the driver's side, and the other one is for the passenger side. Then you got a tiny little knob down here, which is for the fuel filler cap.
I try not to snig it, but I cannot help it.
Yeah, well, there are quite a few knobs in this car as well. And just below it, or below the dash, there is the...
These are things that, like, if you haven't been around 911s, you just wouldn't know. Like,
No.
where to find the fuel filler cap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really inconspicuous where it sits, and there's no labeling on it either. So, and then just below it, or below the dash, you have the opening for the front boot. Light controls. Pull it once, or first position is parking lights, second position is mains, and you turn it to adjust the illumination of the dash. Next to it, obviously, hazards. This little button controls the sunroof. Push it towards you to open it, and the other way to close it, obviously. And this one, this little button, now we're getting into the really sort of Porsche going, where do we put this? Because this is the rear wiper, I think. Should be. It's deleted on mine, but yeah, that's the rear wiper. On the other side, sort of on the corresponding
Why did you
side.
delete it? Scene points.
Well, it didn't work when I got it, and it was actually off when I got it as well.
Yeah, okay.
Mine has it did have a rear spoiler from factory, but it's been removed at some point.
Good
and
move.
the
I'm not a fan of the spoilers on the
not on the narrow bodies anyway.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah. I agree, fully agree. On the other side, you get your
light washers.
Yeah, headlight washers, which again was mandatory in Sweden.
Yeah.
So yeah, those go there. This one is for your intermittent wipers.
What?
Yes.
No fucking. I never knew that.
No. So you turn it, and the first click, it will be quite. It sort of moves. Well, it sort of works a bit counterintuitive, because the first click is for the shortest sort of the shortest wait in between strokes.
Yeah.
And then as you turn it,
then it gets longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're fully adjustable, and they also work with the wipers off. And if you have the intermittence wipers on and you flick it, the first, it will just go all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah. Dials. We should talk about dials.
There's 5 of them.
Yeah, there's 5 of them, and 2 of them are divided into 2. So the first one, that's your basic levels. You get your fuel level or fuel gauge. Then you get your oil level gauge, and this one is completely useless. Even the manual says that it shouldn't be trusted.
Reassuring.
Yeah, I think it's more like an indicator of whether there's oil in the car at all.
Yeah.
And I suppose that if you only use it the same way as you would when you check the oil normally, it's sort of accurate with the engine running and warmed up and level. Because when you're driving, the level in the oil tank will during acceleration, the level will drop, and so the gauge will drop as well. So yeah, so why they put that there, I do not know, but it's there, and it's a cool thing to have. Then you got your oil temperature gauge, Usually when normal driving, not when not driving hard, it's on this car. It's just below the first small mark, and on earlier cars you actually had a. I think you had on some years you had a. It actually said what degrees it corresponded to, but on this car it doesn't. So as long as it's not in the red, you're good, I hope. Then you got probably the two most important warning lights. Well, they are the only warning lights. You get your oil pressure warning lights, and you get your charge lights. And the thing is, when this if this turns on, you should stop straight away, because that could mean that the fan belt is snapped. And if the fan belt's snapped, the engine will get very hot very quickly, and it won't show on the temperature gauge because the oil will not heat up, but you will get hot spots in the engine, so that can cause a whole world of issues. So if that illuminates, stop. Oil pressure, pretty basic. Normally you would read about 1 bar per 1,000 RPM. This one is a bit wonky. I think it's the sender unit, so it actually shows a lot more than I get somewhere like between 2 and 3 bars in during idle. So it's not correct, but I know that the oil pressure is good. So then you get your tacho, obviously, speedo, obviously, clock, obviously, heater controls we've already discussed. Fog lights, I think it's, if you turn it, it's the front, and if you put it out, it's the rear, or the other way around. I don't have fog lights on mine, they've been deleted. Heated rear screen, cigarette lighter, and glove box. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll get some overlays of this as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much for taking us through that, Felix.
Yeah, thank you.
I feel like less of a noob, and hopefully won't look like an utter prat when I go to my event tonight.
Yes, hopefully.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Yeah, thank you. And make sure to tune in next time, and like and share and subscribe and leave a comment. And
yeah, is there anything more that you'd like to know?
Yeah.
Any requests about 911 content? You've had a car for, as I say, 12 years, and I work at a dealership, a classic car dealership, that we have 2 very experienced Porsche technicians working there. So if you have any specific questions, something we haven't answered, then we've definitely got access to the knowledge. So
I just realized another thing I haven't spoken about.
Yeah.
Should I do that?
Yeah.
As sort of a
bonus.
Yeah. These ones you get. Upper one is for your seat belts.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not really on this car. It depends on different markets. I think the US were connected to actually the seat belt itself, but on this car it actually goes off after sort of a few seconds after starting the car. The lower one is a warning light for the. It's a combination actually. It's a combined warning light for the parking brake and the braking system itself. So basically, if it turns on during normal driving, it's because that there are 2 pressure switches in the master cylinder, and those 2 should read or should have the same value going from them. And if the electronics, well, there's a small circuit board behind this, if that detects a difference between the 2 pressure switches, it triggers the warning light.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And that's also what controls the brake lights, the same pressure switches in the master cylinder. So yeah, I think that was everything.
Cool. Thank you again, Felix.
Yeah. And again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll hopefully see you soon.
Great.
Bye.